Daniel had never known fear like this one moment. The ground shook with the sound of alien ships tearing the sky. The next moment, the earth opened beneath his feet. He remembered the screams, the fire, the collapsing buildings, and then nothing but a rushing fall into darkness. When he awoke, the world above was gone, replaced by the silence of the underground. His head throbbed, dust covered his face, and broken stone pressed against his ribs. Daniel tried to move, his body stiff, his throat dry like sand. He looked around, but there was no light. Only shadows pressing in from every side. The only sound came from water dripping somewhere in the distance. Echoing in the hollow tunnels, he coughed and called out for help. But his voice was swallowed by the endless dark. Daniel had no idea how deep he had fallen. He searched with his hands, crawling along sharp stone, trying to find a way out, but every tunnel twisted like a maze. Every step only led him deeper into the unknown. His stomach growled, his lips cracked, and he felt weaker with each passing hour. He had no food, no water, and no hope. Death felt close, waiting patiently in the shadows. As hours turned into what felt like days, Daniel's body shook from weakness. His mind whispered that maybe it was better to close his eyes, to let go. But then something changed. A faint glow appeared far ahead, like a candle hidden in the dark. Daniel froze, fear tightening his chest. Was it a trick of his mind? Was he dreaming? The glow moved closer, slow and steady. And then he heard its soft footsteps echoing on the stone floor. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Someone, or something, was down here with him. He pressed his back against the cold wall, heart pounding like a drum. The glow grew stronger, bathing the tunnel in pale light. It wasn't fire. It wasn't human. It was coming from a figure, tall and slender. Stepping silently toward him, the figure stopped only a few steps away. Daniel could finally see her. She was not human. Her skin was pale with a faint shimmer, her eyes glowing like twin moons. She looked young, almost fragile, but her presence filled the tunnel with an eerie calm. In her hands, she held something that glowed faintly. A strange container carved from crystal. Daniel wanted to speak, but his lips were too dry, his voice broken. The alien girl tilted her head, studying him with quiet eyes. She stepped closer and knelt before him, her long hair brushing against the stone floor. She raised the container to him, her gesture clear. She was offering it. Daniel stared at the glowing liquid inside. His stomach twisted in hunger. His throat begged for relief, but fear filled his mind. What if it was poison? What if she wanted to kill him slowly? His shaking hands hovered over the container, unsure. The alien girl said nothing, but her eyes. Her eyes showed no anger, no cruelty. They showed something else, patience. Maybe even kindness. Daniel closed his eyes, his heart racing. He had no choice. If he refused, he would die here alone, with trembling hands. He took the container and raised it to his lips. The liquid was strange, thick yet warm, glowing faintly even in the cup. He hesitated one last time, then drank. The taste was unlike anything he had ever known. Sweet but heavy, rich yet soothing. It slid down his throat. And at once his body felt alive again. Strength returned to his arms. His heartbeat slowed. His mind cleared. Daniel gasped, his body trembling from the sudden rush of energy. He looked at the alien girl with wide eyes. She had saved him. For a long moment, they just stared at each other in the flickering glow. A human and an alien. Trapped in the same darkness, Daniel felt a strange mix of fear and gratitude. Why would she help him? Why would an alien, one of the invaders, show mercy? The silence of the tunnel gave no answer. Only her calm gaze remained, steady and unbroken. Then, in the distance, a low rumble echoed through the stone. Dust fell from the ceiling. Rocks shifted. Under their feet, the underground was not safe. Daniel knew this was only the beginning. He had fallen into a world he did not understand. And the girl before him, his savior or his captor, was the only chance he had to survive. Daniel sat in the dim light, his body shaking from what he had just tasted. The liquid burned through him with warmth, chasing away weakness. Filling his empty veins with life again, for the first time since the collapse, he felt strong enough to breathe without pain. He touched his chest, feeling his heart beat steady. Amazed that he had not died after all, the alien girl watched him quietly, her glowing eyes never leaving his face. She had not spoken a word since she appeared. Yet her actions told more than speech ever could. She offered him her gift, something that kept him alive when death was certain. But Daniel's mind swirled with fear and doubt. Why would she help him, a human? When her kind had brought ruin to the surface above, his voice finally broke through the silence, weak and rough. Why? Why did you save me? He whispered. The girl tilted her head slightly. Her long hair falling across her shoulders, she blinked slowly, then pressed her hand against her chest, as if to say it was her choice, her reason, but still, no words. Daniel realized something then. Perhaps she could not speak his language. Perhaps even if she tried, he would not understand. The thought unsettled him. How could they survive together if they could not share words? Yet, the look in her eyes gave him more clarity than words ever could. They were not eyes of an enemy, not eyes of a killer. They were the eyes of someone who had chosen to protect. The container in his hands still glowed faintly. Holding the last drops of the strange liquid, Daniel raised it again, sipping carefully. The warmth spread inside him, calming his hunger, easing his pain. It was not food, not water, but something more. Something his body seemed to crave now. He stared at the girl, wondering what she had given him. Had it come from her people's technology, or from her own body? The thought sent a shiver down his spine, both fear and awe mixing within him. The alien girl sat down across from him, her movements graceful and quiet. She placed her hands together, as if in prayer, then looked at him with calm patience. Daniel understood her meaning. Rest. Stay alive. Keep your strength. But his human instincts pushed questions into his mind. What was she doing here? Why was she alone in these tunnels? And why did she carry such a gift? Time moved slowly in the underground, without the sun, without the stars. Daniel could not tell how long he had been down here. Hours could have been days. Days could have been weeks. But now, with the girl near him, the darkness no longer felt empty. The silence was filled with her presence, steady and unshaken. At times, Daniel tried to stand and walk, searching for a way out. The girl followed him silently, her glow guiding the path. The tunnels twisted endlessly, some leading to dead ends, others to deep caverns that echoed with strange noises. Once, Daniel heard a sound like claws scraping stone. And the girl, quickly, pulled him back, her hand tight on his arm. Her eyes warned him there were dangers down here beyond hunger and thirst. Whatever lived in the dark was not meant for humans to face. Each time he grew weak, the girl shared her gift again. The glowing liquid sustained him, kept him alive when his body begged to collapse. At first, he resisted, ashamed of his dependence. But soon, he realized without her, he would already be bones in the dirt. Each drink tied him closer to her, a bond he could not break, even if he wished. Daniel began to notice small things about her, the way her hands trembled slightly each time she gave him the liquid, the way her glow dimmed for a while after she shared it. It dawned on him, her gift was not endless. Each time she saved him, she was giving a piece of herself. And yet, she never stopped, never hesitated. The weight of her sacrifice struck him harder than any stone. He looked at her differently now, not as an alien stranger, but as someone carrying a burden for him. A debt he could never repay. His heart clenched with guilt, but also with a strange respect in the endless darkness of the underground. She had become his light. One night, if it could be called that, Daniel sat close to her. The air was heavy, the silence deep. He placed his hand over his chest, then pointed at her and whispered, "Thank you." She tilted her head again, eyes soft. Then placed her glowing hand over his heart for a moment. The warmth of her touch spread through him, stronger than the liquid she gave. In that instant, Daniel felt something unspoken, something more than survival. But before the moment could last, the tunnel shuddered. Rocks fell, dust filled the air, and a distant roar echoed through the cavern. Daniel and the alien girl looked at each other. The underground was alive with danger again, and this time her gift alone might not be enough to keep them both safe. The tunnels had grown colder. Every sound echoed like a whisper of warning, and every shadow seemed to hide unseen eyes. Daniel walked carefully, guided by the soft glow of the alien girl. Without her, he would have been blind in the maze of stone, lost forever. At first, he kept his distance from her. She was still alien, still mysterious, and his mind refused to let go of fear. But the longer they stayed together, the more he noticed small details. The way she slowed her steps when he stumbled. The way her glowing eyes watched over him when he slept. She never spoke, yet her silence was not empty, it carried meaning. As if words were unnecessary between them. One day, they reached a cavern where water pooled from cracks in the ceiling. Daniel rushed to it, desperate to drink something real, but the girl stopped him, shaking her head. Her hand pressing against his chest firmly. Her glow dimmed slightly as if to warn him. Daniel looked closer and saw strange slime moving in the water, a living poison waiting for any creature foolish enough to drink. He shivered, realizing without her he would already be dead many times over. Gratitude began to replace his fear. Every step with her revealed how much she risked for him. Every gift she gave drained her own strength. Yet she did not stop. Daniel started to wonder why. Why would she choose to help a human when her people had brought war to his world? He asked her softly one night, "Why me?" his voice echoing. In the stone, she looked at him for a long moment, then touched the wall. Tracing symbols into the dust, the shapes meant nothing to him, but her eyes held sadness deeper than words could show. He understood one thing: she too was running. She too was hunted. The silence of the underground forced them to rely on each other. Daniel tried to make her laugh, though he wasn't sure if her kind even understood humor. Sometimes he mimed ridiculous things, pretending to trip or fumble with rocks. At first, she only tilted her head in confusion. But one time, he saw her lips curve. The faintest smile. It was the first spark of warmth he had seen from her, and it stayed in his memory like a flame in the dark. Days turned into something longer. Daniel could not count them, but he knew his bond with the girl grew with each moment. He gave her a name in his mind, Leora, meaning light, because that was what she had become to him. He never said it aloud. But whenever he thought of her, the name fit perfectly. She was no longer just an alien, no longer just a stranger. She was his lifeline, his guide, and in many ways, his friend. But friendship in the tunnels came with danger. Strange sounds followed them sometimes, low growls that made the stone vibrate. Once, while Daniel slept, he woke to find Leora standing guard, her hand glowing brighter than before. She faced the darkness like a shield, her body tense, ready for something he could not see. When he stirred, she placed a finger to her lips, telling him to stay silent. The sound passed eventually, leaving only the echo of dread behind. Daniel realized then that she was not only protecting him from hunger, but from enemies far worse. The bond between them deepened in silence. When Daniel grew tired, she offered her hand to steady him. When she stumbled, he caught her, holding her weight against his chest until she could stand again. Neither spoke a word, but trust grew like roots beneath stone. Unseen, but strong, still, questions haunted him. Each time she gave him her glowing gift, he saw her shoulders weaken, her glow fade. She was sacrificing more than just comfort. She was sacrificing herself. Daniel's heart twisted with guilt. He had been raised to fight aliens, to see them as enemies. Yet here was one who gave him life at the cost of her own. How could he ever repay her? How could he ever prove he was worthy of her trust? One night, as they rested in a hollow carved by time, Daniel could not sleep. He watched her sitting with her back against the wall. Her eyes half closed, but never fully resting. Her glow pulsed softly. Weaker than before, Daniel reached out, his voice low. "You can't keep doing this for me." She opened her eyes, met his, and then slowly shook her head. Her hand touched his arm lightly, as if to say he was worth the cost. The touch burned into him, not with fire, but with something deeper, an unspoken promise. Daniel closed his eyes, his thoughts heavy. This bond was not just survival anymore. It was something greater, something that tied human and alien together in a way the war above could never break. In the endless dark, where hope should have died, a strange and fragile light had begun to grow. A light born from trust, sacrifice, and the will to live side by side. But the underground had its own rules, and nothing pure lasted long. As Daniel drifted into an easy sleep, a sound echoed again through the cavern. It was closer this time, heavier, filled with hunger. Leora's eyes snapped open, her glow brightening. In alarm, she turned toward the darkness, her hand trembling as she raised it. Something was coming. Something that would test their bond in ways neither of them was ready for. Asterisk, the sound that haunted the tunnels faded at last, leaving silence heavy as stone. Daniel's heart still raced, his body tense. But the alien girl's glow softened again. She stayed alert, her eyes scanning the dark, while Daniel leaned against the wall. Trying to breathe, the underground was alive, not just with them, but with things that waited in shadows. They moved carefully through the twisting paths, guided only by her faint light. Sometimes the tunnels were narrow, forcing Daniel to crawl on his knees, scraping his skin against jagged rock. Other times, they opened into wide caverns, so massive he could not see the ceiling. Each cavern carried its own secrets, carvings etched into walls, symbols glowing faintly like forgotten stars. Daniel stopped at one of them, his hand brushing across the rough lines. The symbols seemed too deliberate, too old to be meaningless. He turned to the alien girl, his eyes full of questions. She stepped forward, placing her slender fingers on the markings, her glow merging with the symbols. At once, the carvings lit brighter, pulsing like they were alive. The light spilled across the cavern wall, revealing shapes, battles, and figures carved long before either of them was born. Daniel stared in awe, his breath shallow. It was a story. Written in stone, he saw tall figures like her kind, fighting against monstrous shapes with claws and teeth. He saw human-like forms, weaker, smaller, caught between giants. The story stretched across the cavern wall, showing centuries of struggle. Endless war beneath the earth. The alien girl traced one figure of female form, with glowing hands, then pressed her chest gently, as if to say, "This is my people." Her eyes lowered, sadness heavy in them. Daniel felt a chill creep over him. Her people had fought in these tunnels long before he ever fell here. They had bled, suffered, and carried secrets no human had ever known. He whispered softly, "So this is why you hide." The girl's silence was answer enough. Her gift, her glow, her sacrifice, it was not just for him. It was tied to something ancient, something greater. Daniel began to wonder if fate had pushed him into this place. Not accident, not chance. The deeper they walked, the more symbols they found. Some showed victory. Others showed loss. One wall showed her kind kneeling, broken, while strange winged. Creatures stood above them. Daniel felt his chest tighten. If her people had once been powerful, what had beaten them so low? And were those enemies still here? Lurking in the dark, in one chamber, Daniel noticed broken weapons. Blades rusted to dust. He picked one up. Its edge dull, but still sharp enough to cut skin. The weight felt strange in his hand. Heavy with history, the girl watched him. Her eyes unreadable. Daniel clenched the weapon tighter, his voice low. "If we're going to survive, I can't only depend on you." For the first time, she gave a small nod. It was not approval, but recognition. He was no longer only her burden, but her ally. As they moved further, the air grew thicker, colder. The tunnels hummed with strange energy, a vibration that prickled Daniel's skin. The girl slowed, her glow flickering, her eyes wary. Daniel sensed her unease and gripped the old blade tighter. "What is this place?" he whispered. She didn't answer with words, but pointed ahead to a massive arch carved from black stone. The archway was unlike anything Daniel had seen underground. Symbols covered it, twisting into patterns that seemed to move when he blinked. At the base lay bones, human and alien alike, piled like forgotten offerings. Daniel swallowed hard, his stomach turning. Who had died here, and why? The girl knelt before the arch, pressing her glowing hand against one of the symbols. A pulse of light spread outward, awakening the carvings. The arch responded, humming with power, the sound deep enough to shake the floor. Daniel stumbled back, eyes wide. "What did you do?" he asked, his voice cracking, but she only turned her gaze to him, serious, almost warning. The carvings revealed another part of the story. This place was not only a grave, but a gate, a passage into deeper levels of the underground, where things stronger, darker, more dangerous waited. Daniel felt cold sweat on his neck. If the upper tunnels were already filled with death, what lived below must be far worse. The alien girl touched her chest again, then pointed to the gate. Daniel understood. She had to go there. This was her path, her mission, one she could not abandon. He stared at her, his voice trembling. "If you go, I go too." Her eyes softened, almost sad, but she did not argue. For the first time, Daniel realized their bond was no longer just survival. He had chosen her path, even if it led to death. The archway rumbled again, dust falling from the ceiling. A faint roar echoed from the depths beyond, shaking the stones around them. Daniel tightened his grip on the ancient blade, his heart racing. Beside him, the alien girl's glow brightened, fierce and determined. Together, they stood before the black arch. Together, they prepared to step into secrets that had been buried for centuries. And Daniel knew, once they crossed that threshold, nothing would ever be the same again. The black arch still hummed with power when Daniel and the alien girl stepped back. Dust drifted down like falling ash. The silence too heavy, too watchful. Daniel's grip on the old blade tightened, his palms slick with sweat. He felt as if unseen eyes were fixed on them, waiting, judging, the alien girl his light. His lifeline stood tense, her glow brighter than before. Her eyes narrowed, her breath slow. Daniel had learned to read her moods, and now he saw it clearly. Fear not of the stone, but of what was coming. The sound reached them, first footsteps, sharp and heavy, echoing down the tunnel behind. Not the wandering scrape of beasts, not the shifting fall of stone. These were deliberate, steady, filled with purpose. Hunters. Daniel froze, his heart hammering. The alien girl turned, her glow dimming low, trying to vanish into the dark. But the footsteps grew louder, closer, carrying with them a faint metallic hum. Voices followed, low, guttural, in a language Daniel didn't know, but instinctively feared. Her people. He realized or worse, those who wanted her dead. The girl grabbed his arm and pulled him into a narrow crack in the wall. They pressed close together, hidden in shadow. Daniel could feel her trembling, not from weakness, but from dread. He had never seen her this afraid. That alone told him enough. The hunters were not to be taken lightly. 3 figures emerged into the cavern, tall and armored. Their eyes glowed. Faintly, but not with warmth, only with the cold shine of predators. Each carried weapons that pulsed with strange energy. Blades that hummed like angry storms. Daniel's throat tightened. Against them, his dull, ancient blade was nothing. But still, he gripped it tighter, refusing to let it go. The hunters spoke to one another, scanning the cavern. Their voices carried authority, as if they commanded not just each other, but the very darkness around them. The alien girl leaned close, her lips almost at Daniel's ear. For the first time, she whispered a sound. Soft and broken. "Run," the single word spoken in his tongue. Struck him harder than any weapon. Her voice was fragile, unused, yet filled with urgency. She had learned enough of his language just to tell him that. But Daniel shook his head, his jaw set. He would not run, not this time. The hunters spread out, their weapons glowing, their eyes sweeping the walls. One of them turned, scanning dangerously close to their hiding place. Daniel's chest burned from holding his breath. Beside him, the alien girl's glow dimmed completely, leaving them in near darkness. But then, a stone shifted under Daniel's boot. Clattering against the cavern floor, the hunters snapped toward the sound, their weapons flaring bright. Daniel knew the moment was gone. Hiding was useless. He leaped out from the crack, the old blade raised in shaky hands. The hunters hissed, their voices sharp, mocking. They expected an easy kill. A fragile human standing against them. The alien girl stepped forward too, her glow bursting back to life. Light filled the cavern. Blinding for a moment, her hands shimmered. Energy swirling at her fingertips. The hunters froze. Then advanced slowly, wary of her power. Daniel realized then they feared her. She was not just a runaway, not just a girl. She was something greater, something dangerous to them. The fight began in a flash. One hunter lunged at Daniel, the blade of energy slicing the air. Daniel swung wildly, his old weapon clashing against glowing steel. The shock nearly tore the weapon from his hands. But he held firm, teeth gritted, pain seared his arm as the weapon grazed him. But he refused to fall. The alien girl moved like flowing light, her hands casting shields of glow that deflected the hunter's strikes. But each shield weakened her, draining her strength. Daniel saw her stagger, her glow flicker. Fury rose in him. And unshakable, he lunged at the nearest hunter, driving his rusted blade into the cracks of its armor. The creature roared, stumbling back. The other hunters pressed harder, weapons flashing. Daniel's body screamed with pain, but adrenaline kept him moving. He fought not for himself, but for her. Every strike he made, every drop of blood spilled, was a promise he would not let them take her. She had given him life again and again. And now he gave her his strength. The cavern shook from the battle, rocks crashing down, dust filling the air. Daniel's vision blurred, sweat stinging his eyes. One hunter raised its weapon high. Aiming for the alien girl, Daniel threw himself in the way, the blade slashing across his side. He cried out, collapsing to one knee, but still held his weapon up. Still fighting, still refusing to die. The alien girl screamed not in words, but in a sound that shook the cavern itself. Her glow erupted, blinding white, energy blasted outward. Striking the hunters with a force that shattered stone, the creatures flew back, their armor smoking, their weapons falling silent. The cavern trembled, dust and light swirling like a storm. When it ended, silence fell again. The hunters lay broken. On the ground, their glowing eyes dimmed. Daniel gasped for air, his side bleeding. but he was alive. The alien girl knelt beside him, her glow faint and trembling. She pressed her hand to his wound, her energy pouring into him. Daniel grabbed her wrist weakly, whispering, "No, you'll burn yourself out," but she shook her head, her eyes fierce. Her bond with him was unbreakable, and she would not let him go. The cavern lay in ruin. Smoke rising from shattered stone, the bodies of the hunters twitched faintly, sparks dying in their broken weapons. Daniel leaned against the wall, his breath ragged, blood dripping from his side. His hands shook around the dull blade, the weight of survival pressing heavy on his chest. Beside him, the alien girl's glow flickered weakly, her face pale, her hands trembling from the power she had unleashed. Daniel reached for her shoulder, steadying her. She had given everything in that blast of light, and now she looked as fragile as glass. The silence did not last. From deeper in the tunnels came another sound, a roar that rolled like thunder. The ground trembled, stones rattling loose from the ceiling. Daniel felt his stomach twist. The hunters had only been the beginning. Something greater was coming, something drawn by the battle's fury. The girl's glowing eyes met his, filled with urgency. She motioned with her hands, pointing forward, deeper into the tunnels. Daniel frowned, shaking his head. "No, we should go back." But she pressed her palm to his chest, firm, desperate. Her look told him everything going back meant death. Only forward held a chance. Together they stumbled deeper, the glow of her light guiding their way. Daniel's wound burned, each step agony, but he refused to stop. Every breath was a fight, but every glance at her gave him strength. She had risked everything to keep him alive, and now he swore silently he would do the same for her. The tunnels grew narrower, the air hot, vibrating with strange energy. Daniel's skin prickled, his body on edge. Shadows twisted on the walls, and faint growls echoed behind them. The hunters were not dead, they were being followed by something worse. Something that moved like fire in the dark. They reached a cavern lit by veins of glowing stone, red and pulsing like burning embers. Daniel looked around, sweat dripping down his face. The heat was suffocating, the walls trembling as if alive. From the shadows stepped a beast unlike the hunters, massive, with jagged armor covering its body. Its maw lined with rows of teeth, its eyes burned like molten fire. Locking onto Daniel and the girl, Daniel's breath caught, fear gripping his chest. His blade felt useless, his body weak. Yet he stepped forward, placing himself between the beast and the girl. His voice cracked but steady. "You'll have to go through me first." The girl's glow flared brighter at his words, her hand rising to his back. Together, they faced the monster. Human and alien as one. The beast roared, the sound shaking the cavern walls. It charged, claws tearing through stone, sparks flying with each strike. Daniel dodged, barely escaping its swipe, his blade slashing against its armored hide. The weapon barely scratched it, but the force of his swing slowed it for a heartbeat, enough for the girl to unleash her light. A beam of energy struck the beast, scorching its side. The smell of burning flesh filling the air. The creature howled, enraged. It slammed its massive claw against the ground, the shockwave throwing Daniel to the floor. His blade skittered out of reach, his vision blurred with pain. The beast lunged at him, its jaws opening wide, but the girl threw herself in front, her glow erupting like a shield. The beast crashed against it, sparks exploding. Her body shook violently, her glow dimming under the strain. Daniel scrambled to his blade, gripping it with bloody hands. He ran toward the beast, shouting with fury. Every step burned, but he pushed through the pain. He leaped, driving the blade into the creature's exposed joint. The beast roared, staggering. The girl unleashed another burst of light. Striking the wound, the combined force tore through the monster's armor, sending T crashing back into the cavern wall. Stone split. Fire-like light spilling from the cracks, the beast writhed, shrieking. Before collapsing into the glowing fissures, the cavern trembled as if the underground itself screamed. Daniel fell to his knees, his chest heaving, his blade slipping from his grasp. The girl stumbled beside him, her glow faint but steady. For a moment, silence returned, broken only by their ragged breathing. Daniel turned to her, his voice hoarse. "We did it. We're still alive." She looked at him, her lips parting as if to speak. But instead, she only pressed her hand to his chest, her touch soft, her eyes filled with something unspoken. It was not just relief, not just survival. It was trust. Unshakable and real. Daniel realized then that this bond between them was no accident. It was forged in battle, carved in sacrifice. Sealed by fire in the dark, they had become something more than human and alien. They had become partners, warriors, survivors tied together by fate. But the underground was not finished with them yet. The fissures glowed brighter, rumbling louder. As if the beast's fall had awakened something even deeper. Daniel forced himself to his feet, his hand gripping hers tightly, together. They turned toward the only path left, deeper into the unknown. Their battle had not ended, had only begun. The tunnels groaned around them. The glowing fissures widened, casting the cavern in red light like fire beneath the earth. Daniel held the alien girl's hand tightly, pulling her forward as the ground split behind them. Every step was a race against collapse, every breath filled with dust and heat. The beast was gone, but its death had awoken something deeper. The underground trembled as if alive, angry that one of its guardians had fallen. Daniel's body ached, his wounds burned. Yet he refused to let go. Beside him, the girl's glow flickered weakly, her strength fading still. She pressed on, her eyes locked on him, trusting him to lead. They stumbled through a tunnel that sloped upward for the first time since the collapse. Daniel felt fresh air brush against his face. It was faint, but real hope sparked in his chest. There had to be a way out, a path back to the surface. The tunnel opened into another chamber. Vast and hollow, at its center stood a pillar of stone, cracked but steady. On its surface glowed symbols brighter than any they had seen before. The girl touched them, her hand trembling, and the chamber responded. Light spread across the walls, painting the cavern in pale gold. It felt warm, alive, like the touch of the sun. Daniel stared in wonder, his voice barely a whisper. "Is this the way out?" The girl nodded faintly, though her body swayed with exhaustion. She had given too much, her gift nearly gone. Her glow was thin now, like a candle at its last flicker. Daniel's heart twisted with fear. If the chamber demanded more power, more of her light, it could take her life. He stepped forward, placing his hand against the pillar. Nothing happened. No light responded, no warmth came. It was her, not him, who carried the key to this place. She looked at him, her eyes soft, filled with something deeper than words. Slowly, she pressed both her hands against the pillar, her glow flooding into it. The entire chamber blazed with golden light, brighter than anything Daniel had seen since the sky. The ceiling cracked, stones splitting apart, above them, faint rays of sunlight pierced through the rock. Daniel's eyes burned with tears. The surface, they were so close. But the girl's body shook violently, her knees buckling. Daniel rushed to her, wrapping his arms around her as her glow poured away. "No, not like this," he whispered, desperately. "You can't leave me now." Her head rested against his chest, her breath shallow. She had carried him through hunger, through fear, through darkness itself, and now she was fading. Daniel clenched his teeth, his voice breaking. If you give everything, I'll lose you." He pulled her hands from the pillar, pressing them to his chest instead. His body shook. As the light began to dim, but still, the chamber held its glow, the crack in the ceiling widening. The girl's eyes opened weakly, confusion flickering in them. Daniel whispered, "You've given enough. Let me carry you this time." He lifted her into his arms. Her body light but trembling, step by step, he climbed toward the shaft of sunlight. Rocks cut his hands, pain shot through his body, but he kept moving. Every breath was a vow, every step a promise. The ceiling broke apart further. And finally, Daniel's head rose into the light. The sun burned against his skin, blinding and beautiful. He gasped, filling his lungs with fresh air. For the first time in what felt like years, he felt alive, truly alive. The girl stirred weakly in his arms, her glow faint, but when the sunlight touched her skin, it shimmered anew. Her eyes opened, reflecting the sky for the first time. Daniel carried her onto the surface, stumbling into a field of broken earth. The land bore scars of war, burned and shattered, but above, the sky stretched wide, blue and endless. The girl lifted her hand, reaching toward it, as if touching freedom. For the first time, tears welled in Daniel's eyes. They had survived, against everything. Against every shadow, every hunter, every beast, they had made it to the dawn. He set her down gently, his hand never leaving hers. She looked at him, her lips parting as if to speak again. This time her voice was soft, fragile, but clear. "Together," she whispered. Daniel's chest tightened, his heart pounding with something greater than survival. He squeezed her hand, nodding together. The sun rose higher, burning away the night. Daniel knew the war above still raged. He knew enemies would return. Hunters would come, dangers would wait, but he also knew he was no longer alone. He had found strength, not in weapons, not in power, but in a bond born in the darkest depths, a bond that turned fear into courage and despair into hope. The human and the alien girl stood on the scarred earth, looking toward the horizon. The dawn painted their faces in gold, a promise of something new. Daniel tightened his grip on her hand, his voice steady. "We'll survive this world. No matter what comes," her glow brightened softly. No longer dim, but alive, together. They stepped forward, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as survivors of the underground, carrying a light that could never be broken.